every day. Bless us as we come together to deliberate the business of this country. And at the end of our deliberations, we may do what is right, just, and good for our people and for Jamaica land we love. Bless those who are on their way and allow them to reach safely to the meeting, even though it's by online platform. To thee we give all thanks and praise. For all mercies we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Dai. Do we have any apology for absence?
Yes, Madam AG, Mr. Edwards has apologized for having to leave the meeting early.
But Mr. Edwards is on with us now.
Yes, he is.
Very well. Duly noted, and we ask that it be noted for the record. The minister is unable to be with us for this meeting because he has some urgent matters that he has to attend to. As a result, I'm filling in so that the work of the committee can continue and that we wouldn't have to adjourn the meeting. We have three presentations today, which will be the primary work of the committee. So before we get to those presentations from the Caribbean College of Family Physicians, that's the Jamaica chapter of that, and then the Ministry of Education, the Union of Tertiary Students, and the National Secondary Union Council of the Ministry of Education, and then Vape Shop Jamaica Limited. We will just go through the minutes of the meeting of July 27, 2021. May I ask that we just put up the minutes also, please? Very well. We asked to look at the members present, if it accurately reflects those who were present and those who were absent.
Madam Chair, this is Moreland.
I'm sorry?
I was present. I was a bit late.
Very well. We ask that that be reflected. All right, so the welcome and opening remarks, confirmation of the minutes, matters arising, new business, presentations were, yes?
Morning, Madam Chair, and thank you for noting my apology for having to leave early due to a funeral that I'm involved in today. Just a couple minor adjustments in relation to those who were present at the last meeting, Madam Chair. And these relate to just descriptive titles. Ms. Marlene Aldred, the Solicitor General at that time, would correctly have been described as QC. So that's a correction I request.
Yes. Very well.
And also the representative.
Please just scroll down the section of the minutes so that part is visible on the screen. Yes. Yes.
And also the reference to Audrey Morris, Ms. Audrey Morris, powerful representative, should correctly refer to Dr. Audrey Morris.
Very well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Accuracy does matter. Ms. Brandon, let's just scroll through Not very fast, but matters arising. We look at each section. If we go through to the presentation from the Jamaica Psychiatric Association. I think subclause here should have a hyphen between it, which is why it has come up as in red. Clause 4. Right, we can scroll on. So for the typographical errors that are coming up and that are obvious, I will just ask that those be corrected. And just ask for members whose comments are recorded to just make a quick check to ensure that they accurately reflect the discussion. So like here, which it says between, just a minute, the paragraph. Hold on, Miss Brandon. Scroll down, please. Right, just right there, between 29, I'm sorry, please scroll back up. Yes, right there. I'm just highlighting between 29% to 43%. It should be between 29 and 43%. So there are going to be some typographical errors, which the red underline doesn't necessarily indicate an error, but it's a prompt for a double check as well as the blue for grammatical checking. All right, please continue to scroll. I really should have been asking in respect of each page, but I will take the non-intervention as an indication that apart from checking for the typographical errors, that no amendment to any of the pages has been requested. But I will still ask, is there any amendment to be noted other than those already indicated? If none, then may I ask someone to move for confirmation of the minutes?
I so move, Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Seconded.
Thank you so much. We can move to matters arising. If there is any matter arising for discussion, clarification, amplification. May I ask that we put back the agenda, please, just for, we post it until the actual item is being dealt with. Thank you. If there is no matter arising, then we will move into item 7 with our matters for discussion and invite presentations in the order in which they are listed. So we'll start with the Jamaica chapter of the Caribbean College of Family Physicians, then the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students and the National Secondary Students Council of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and then Vape Shop Jamaica Limited. So may I invite the presenter from Jamaica chapter of the Caribbean College of
Family Physicians.
And just ask, we see the name Senu Ononuju. We just ask for your title for the record.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, I hope I'm clearly heard. The name is Dr. Seni Ononuju. I am the president and chair of the Caribbean College of Family Physicians, Jamaican chapter. And I was asked today to bring the college's opinion of what we have said to this meeting. So right away, without much ado, I will go ahead and start the presentation. The college, after reviewing the document, felt that it was a big document and it was well written, it was detailed, legally specific, referencing terms and applying them to specific situations and speaking mainly to the law. On a personal note, I would say I was quite impressed by the document because it shows the amount of work, background work that was done, and the corrections were not many. And it attempted to restrict the importation, sale of, and use of tobacco at all levels. It seeks to protect our young and prevent anyone on the roadside from selling cigarettes. It informs us, doctors, that we are legally allowed, with the permission of a building proprietor, to enter and hold or confiscate tobacco where held for greater than 7 days on a premises not legally designated. It informs us as to the packaging and allowable labeling of tobacco products, the designation of tobacco smoking areas in buildings, and the rules concerning this. We, in concluding, thought that this was a substantial and complete document, seemingly thorough, which seeks legally to achieve our goals with regards to use of tobacco in all its forms. However, there were no major faults identified in the document. However, it didn't touch on the use of tobacco products within the private setting, such as a home, nor does it refer to any legally or recreational use of tobacco within home setting, with reference to minors. Here I wrote, it was written minors, but also the elderly and the handicapped who are not able to move and are therefore homebound. it does not address how smokers who wish to quit smoking can be assisted. In relation to the aforementioned, we, as the college, recommended that a bill be passed, and whatever bill be passed should include that no child should be in the rooms in homes or houses where persons smoke. And we also recommend that law should mention that individuals who smoke at home should not smoke in the presence of minors, nor of the elderly and the handicapped who are unable to move around. In fact, smoking, as we know, causes so many respiratory illnesses and diseases that children should be protected from cigarette smoke inhalation. And minors should not be allowed in the areas of buildings designated for cigarette smoking when these areas are in use. And among the very serious things that happen with secondhand smoke is sudden death from very little children, infancy, like ages 1 year and below. And this has been in literature from as far back as medicine exists. And therefore, we think that these kids should be well protected. And therefore, legislation in Parliament should be enacted to enable also NHF, that's the National Health Fund, to subsidize medications to facilitate smokers who wish to quit smoking, because there are many people who wish to quit smoking, but they don't have the facility and they don't know the know-how. And those who know the know-how, some of them are unable to afford the medications. And the National Health Fund has been very helpful in other areas, and we believe that they could also assist us in this area. At this point, I'm going to invite one of the members of the Caribbean College Family Physicians, regional and local chapters, to participate or bring in her discussions at this point. She is one of the executive members that we have at the moment. And I would, if you don't mind, invite her to follow up with the discussions. Her name is Anna Brown Morgan, and family physician. She's well known because we, headed by her, have been chairing and carrying on Doctors for Change in an attempt to see if we could curb the spread of COVID-19, and also in an attempt to see if we could convince or explain to the public how the need for the vaccinations, because many people are hesitant, and also if we could see if others who did not understand could help others. So at this point, permit me to bring in Dr. Anna Brown Morgan to make some comments.
Thank you,
Morning.
Dr. Ononuju, and welcome Dr. Brown Morgan.
Yes, thanks for that introduction, Dr. Sene Ononuju. And morning, Mrs. Malaforte, and I'd like to say morning also to Dr. Maurice Guy, who is one of my colleagues. Hello. I'd like to just take up where Dr. Ononuju left off a bit. We know that the laws that are in place are very thorough. I've looked at what pertains in other Caribbean countries, in South America, in the United States. And in fact, I think that we have gone almost as far as most of those countries have gone in limiting the use of tobacco. However, those countries like ourselves have not done much when it comes to looking at tobacco use in the homes. Now we know that we cannot commit crimes at home. It's just not right. You cannot commit violence against anyone in the home. You cannot abuse anyone in the home. It's illegal. Cigarette smoking in the presence of minors is illegal, and that doesn't matter the setting. The setting doesn't count. It should be illegal to smoke in the presence of minors, no matter where. Could be in the car, could be in the home, because we know that from when you smoke in the presence of pregnant mothers, you end up with low-weight birth babies who have weak lungs. And we know that when you smoke in the presence of babies, you get additional infections in the lungs, asthma, increased ear infections, cancers, all sorts of things when you smoke. Now, we do not allow abuse of women. We do not allow abuse of children in any other format at this point in time. We should not allow this form of abuse either. So I would like to bring it to you that there needs to be some incentive to decrease smoking in the homes and in cars, and to decrease the exposure of children to secondhand smoking, and also to actually seeing and access to cigarette smoking at an early age. We need to prioritize this area, and we can do this. This is virgin territory. This is an area in which Jamaica can step forward and be the first. It is virgin territory, but we have a responsibility to our children. So that is my compliment to Dr. Onenuju's talk this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown Morgan. Am I to take it that that is the extent of the presentation?
Well, to be honest, I let Dr. Seni know, because we were not really advised on what detail
I see.
we to expect. So if you could advise us, we could also move forward with that if you require more details.
Well, between the two of you, the points are very clear. My understanding is that if there is a prohibition on smoking in the presence of children and pregnant mothers, then it should, and elderly, then it should not matter where the smoking takes place. And so the persons who are intended to be the beneficiary of the prohibition should be protected. And so if the smoking takes place in the home, the law should enable them to lodge a complaint against the person who's smoking in order for them to be protected. That is my understanding. And the second point has to do with subsidizing behavior through the subsidy for medication for persons who wish to quit smoking. Because of that, quitting smoking is good for public health, it's good for personal health, it's good for many things. So the ask would be for subsidies to be awarded to encourage that behavior of quitting smoking.
And there's medication that could be NHS.
Very well. Before I ask Mr. Edwards to respond in respect of the treatment of the issues, I will just open the floor to members of the committee if they wish to pose any question to either of you. Dr. Guy, I see your hand. And then Dr. Longmore.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank both Senna and Arnold for coming on and speaking to us this morning. Certainly the committee would like to get the widest perspective from the community, and indeed the Caribbean College of Family Physicians is one such. I was a little somewhat, though understanding, but somewhat concerned as to how the legislation, Madam Chair, could facilitate the ask by the committee in the private home. The reality is that, yes, we all have a responsibility to ensure that best practices are done. And if it is mandated in the public space, one would have expected that it can happen in the home. You are in a better position, Madam Chair, to indicate how best it could be done to prevent it in the home setting, young children, the elderly, and all those who are compromised as a consequence of secondhand smoking. So that created a little dilemma in my mind as to how it could be done. I hear you, Dr. Morgan, and the fact that nobody else has done it, and Jamaica could be the, you know, the lead point in respect of this. The other matter I have written down here is the matter with the NHF, and whereas it's a good ask, I don't think we need to legislate that the NHF, the legislation deals with that in the NHF. It could be a policy decision on the part of the Ministry of Health to have the NHF include those modification drugs and our treatment for support for those persons who want to quit cigarette smoking. So those are my 2 points, but I want to thank you again for being with us this morning, and long time no see, both of you.
Thank you, Dr. Guy. I see Dr. Brown Morgan hand is raised. I don't know if it is to immediately respond and wonder whether I should take Senator Dr. Longmore's intervention before I ask you to come back in.
Yes.
And I also see Senator Gale, was your hand raised? Is your hand raised? Yes.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yes, yes, Chair.
Dr. Longmore.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. Thank you to my 2 colleagues for that very thoughtful presentation. It's a comment and a little bit of extrapolation on what Dr. Guy also brought to the fore. You know, and I'm a psychiatrist, I never thought of the presentation that was the perspective that was presented as the exposure of children and persons who may be vulnerable as a form of abuse, as a form of child abuse. And when we really think about it, you know, it does give room for thought. And following on and what Dr. Guy was suggesting as to what might be the legislative pathway to incorporate such, and of course, Jamaica probably spearheading such, certainly the consideration of it under the form of child abuse, if it is recognized as such, there is provisions that could probably see to that. It is another perspective, though, in terms of the personal space and the space and distance that we have considered in terms of the contact with this regarding secondhand smoke. But I just really wanted to congratulate the presenters for opening up the thought of this potentially being seen as a form of abuse of children and also elderly abuse. So congrats and thank you again. And as I said, maybe there is a legislative path that already exists. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dr. Longmore. Senator Gale.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning again, everyone. And I want to thank both presenters for what I consider to be a very good presentation, albeit brief, but specific in terms of critical areas that I don't believe other presenters had submitted. And I'm particularly attracted to the NHF support in terms of persons quitting smoking. I think for us, it's a good policy prescription. But if either of you could just expand briefly in terms of how it could actually work and where it has worked before, so it could make it a little easier for us to understand the approach to be taken. But certainly, I think that is a good move. Thank you, Chair.
That's something they're not easy, you know?
Madam Gage Greater, may I ask you to mute your mic, please? We're hearing your conversation. Yes. All right. Let me take Senator Golding Campbell's intervention before I invite in back Doctors Brown Morgan and Honor Nuju.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have probably 2 or 3 questions that I would appreciate the presenters to comment on. And let me just say, I certainly support your position in relation to the protection of children wherever smokers are smoking. However, I am concerned, and let me start with the first point in relation to the recognition that doctors are legally allowed with the permission of a building proprietor to enter and hold and confiscate tobacco where it is held. I think that reference was I think that comment was in reference to clause 28 of the bill, which permits an authorized officer who is either a customs officer, medical officer, or constable to have the power after obtaining the consent of an owner-operator to enter premises where tobacco products are manufactured, distributed, or supplied, etc. And that power also permits them to seize and detain from the premises and basically to remove any tobacco product or relevant product. So my question is, obviously the clause has more particularity to it. My question is, are you suggesting that you agree that it's appropriate for medical officers to have that kind of power? Are doctors prepared to act in a manner that I think we have usually reserved for the constabulary force and the quasi-police functions that have been delegated in law in other circumstances? It seems to me a big ask to ask doctors to perform that kind of role. That's my first question. My second question is in relation to your comment on the use of tobacco within a home setting. And I want your comment that the provisions do not touch on that kind of the power to regulate the use of tobacco in a home setting. And so I'm asking, how do you envisage that kind of enforcement in the context of a private home? And is it that a provision similar to clause 28 is something you would support in relation to the home? I rest there, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Golding Campbell. I think those are excellent questions. I do have some perspective on both questions, but let me invite Doctors Brown Morgan and Dr. Onujuju to respond. Your mic is mute, Dr.
Yes.
Brown Morgan. Yes.
All right. I think between myself and Dr. Onujuju, we can try to speak back. We're neither of us legal heads, but here we go. Dr. Guy mentioned something about the whole idea of the law, and what I want to say is that smoking in the home, in the presence of minors, is equivalent to violence. It's equivalent to a form of, it's an abuse. It is an abuse because we know that we can have children who have asthma, which they die from, can die from early. I've had and be very ill from, and miss out on schooling from, and we also know that the home is the main place everywhere in the world. It's the main place where these children are being exposed to cigarette smoking. That is documented well everywhere. So I think that's a fact. That is documented everywhere, and it's not being dealt with because of some of the issues that I think Senator Golding Campbell may have brought up. How do you monitor it? I think you have to. I personally think that you cannot say no to something because you cannot yet see how to go about enforcing it. I think that if something is a fact, it's a fact. It needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be there. It needs to be open. It needs to be that you cannot smoke in the vicinity of children in any environment. Then I'm sure we will have the legal luminaries and the other individuals who have the foresight to come in and behind to fill in as to how to do the monitoring of this. But I know we can monitor this legally, physicians, by history taking in our office when we see these children with recurring ear infections and with asthma and other upper respiratory tract illnesses and other types of illnesses as well. Because if we track it and we take the family history and cigarette smoking is involved, we need to do something from our end, as we always try to do with advising and the parents. But if this is something that is continuous, just as how you see a youngster, a juvenile who's raped, and you need to make certain reports, then perhaps you need to make some reports here as well. You know, if you need to make the reports, you make the reports. It is then up to the law to do what it does. So that's one of the suggestions that I would make. Read Mr. Gale, and he wanted to know a little bit about how the NHS would deal with these with the whole issue of the prescriptions and the helping to monitor to give us some support in terms of providing for people who want to stop smoking. It's very hard to stop cigarette smoking, and there are several prescriptions: oral, chewing gums, patches that you put on, which are extremely expensive, those tobacco type patches, which can be subsidized and can be made available, and which we can now become, because it's subsidized, we can prescribe more. So there is that aspect. And with Senator Golding Campbell, she spoke about the power that doctors have been given. The thing is, I believe that doctors have in many aspects, because, you know, coming in, I suppose, the old-fashioned thing where we should be setting an example in the community, and on a whole, we are decent, inclined to be decent people. But doctors have been given power in the past. Even now during these COVID times, I believe, I believe that there are laws which allow doctors to act in certain legal ways with regards to public and COVID. Even now, which we are not, we're not inclined for the most part to do, but I do believe that this exists. So now I'm over to Dr. Seni on individual. Please, Seni.
Martin, before you do that, can you just elaborate on that? What do you mean by ways that doctors are allowed to act even now with COVID? What does that mean?
You know, because I've not been so inclined. I don't remember the details, but I do know that with the advent of COVID, some of the empowerment that was given, generally speaking, to deal with people who have COVID and their lack of behavior and their lack of social distancing and their lack of mask wearing and so forth, doctors have been given some legal leeway there to act in the defense of the community. I would ask if you could check for me that because I just know it's there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown Morgan. Dr. Ononuju?
Well, coming to the question regarding the parents at home, by law, I think we should not get into people's homes, but I think public education, repeated public education in the radio, through school children, through the parents, through patients coming to us, all of that is going to change the parents. I remember my husband used to smoke, and all of us advised him not to smoke, and he didn't listen. Then when my son was 6 years old, it was his birthday, and Daddy said, "What should I give you for your birthday?" And the child responded, "I want you to stop smoking," because he kept hearing me complaining that it's not to smoke, it's not good for him, it's not good for this and that. And the child said, "Daddy, I want you to stop smoking." That was the last day the man smoked a cigarette. And I could not believe it that everybody spoke to him. And it's just this little child who said that was the request he wanted for his birthday that let him give up smoking. Now, children have a lot of effects on their parents, whether mothers or fathers. When they go to school and they are taught some certain things, they carry it home and they carry the news home. Even if we don't physically go there, the kids will talk to the parents. And also when they come to us, well, some of us, of which I'm that kind of doctor, I spend time to speak with my patients and I dig into everything. And if cigarette is a problem, I will call Daddy on telephone or mommy, whoever is smoking, say, "Look, although you may not agree, look at what Surgeon, the United States General said as far back as 2014, and he wasn't a doctor. Look at so many things on the radio, on radio and papers, and see if this is good for you." So with education, with time, they're going to change. Coming to the confiscating cigarette, I think it would be easy to do that with the assistance of police officers. Say, for example, the doctor knows that this is going on, and he will call Mr. Officer, "I have such and such a problem. I would not mind if we go there to do so and so." And it will be easy. It's just to make it a law. So that's just it. This is also in addition to the suggestions that Anna brought forward. So that is why I think we will look at it.
Thank you so much, doctors. For me, I have to say that the family focus is very clear and very succinct, and certainly reflective of your organization as a College of Family Physicians. Just to say that generally, we are extremely cautious about what we prescribe in respect of the home and family life, because in section 13(2)(f)(2) of the Constitution, there is a guarantee of the right of everyone to respect for and protection of private and family life and privacy of the home. But that right is protected to the extent that it does not prejudice the right of others. And all of the rights that are guaranteed under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms in the Constitution of Jamaica are protected to the extent that those rights and freedoms do not prejudice the rights and freedoms of others. It's what they say, they are qualified rights. I do believe that, the matter can be addressed, and certainly the Office of the Attorney General would have to just scrutinize the proposal. But if, as a matter of policy, for sound reason, if the justificatory criterion is sound as to the harm that is done and the need for protection of minors and elderlies who cannot move, or persons, whether they're disabled, old or young, who cannot move away from the smoke, and the harm is well documented medically and scientifically, then if there is a prohibition on smoking in the presence of those persons, I believe the law can accommodate it. How it is policed now, it would have to be left to the person in that home whose right to the healthy environment that is free from threat of injury is being harmed, to then lodge the complaint to have it further investigated. And I think also in respect of the enforcement of the power of the doctor to enter premises and to seize the products that are harming the health of someone else, the most practical way I see that being enforced is borne out in your comment, Dr. Brown Morgan, where pursuant to the treatment of a patient and the taking of the history of the patient, which indicates an exposure to tobacco or the other harmful substance being prohibited, that is placed in the home, then not only is the report that does it trigger the reporting obligation, but it is one of those circumstances in which that power could be exercised. So for all suggestions, we will have to filter them through certain lens and tests to ensure that they are constitutional. But just speaking preliminarily and further to deeper analysis, I do believe that the ask can be accommodated if the policy is one of prohibition on smoking in the presence of minor and persons who are unable to move away to escape it, regardless of where it is taking place. And in respect of the NHF, I believe Senator Gale is in another position, and so I can understand his interest in respect of the NHF. But the Parliament generally exercises important oversight function. And the call on parliamentarians generally, and especially in this time of crisis and pandemic and threat, is to heighten its oversight role in respect of harmful practices and to vote against fundings that encourage and perpetuate harmful practices, and to vote in favor of practices that address healthful and healthy lifestyle. So I think the suggestions from my perspective can be well received, and we would have to then look in the wider context of the bill and the policy, how we will address them. I have to say, taking the privilege of chair, that it is really delightful how succinct and to the point the presentations from both of you doctors have been with the family practice perspective. I thank you so much. Thank you so much on behalf of the committee.
Thank you.
Unless there is any other question or comment from a member of the committee, I will allow both of you to make a closing line before we move to the next presenters.
Okay. On behalf of the college, that we are quite pleased that it actually making policies for the country for which everybody is interested in seeing move forward. You considered us to invite us to bring our view. Although the document was long and tedious to read because we are not legally minded, it was very complete in my own opinion. And I felt, and I think, and I've felt so too, and all the board members, that the document was well thought out. You had very little corrections to put in. And granted, we are not legally minded. And I thank you for allowing us to be part of your, at least of the opinion that you're making. And thank you very much. As you see, the name family physician, as you mentioned, we're very much interested in family unity, national unity, people's unity. So I believe that this is one of the way to go. And we thank you very much. Anna, I don't know if you have anything to say.
Just to thank you all, Madam Manfort and everyone else here for taking us on this morning, listening to us, and actually listening to what we think and what we say. We certainly feel it's a good feel. Sometimes things are not a good feel. It's a good feel that perhaps we can make a little difference here when it comes to the care of our children. So thank you so very much for this today.
Before you leave, I think we would be inviting the committee to indicate where it stands in respect of the recommendations. And based on the comments and discussion, it would appear that we would accept the recommendation and to see how they can be accommodated legally and constitutionally within the policy remit. All right. Thank you both, doctors. And very best as you continue to serve our people and to help them in these very challenging times.
I'm sure Dr. Morris Guy will tell you that I've been in Jamaica so long, you'll be surprised. Although I still have an accent.
That's true, that's true.
I've been so very long.
I thought, and we have a psychiatrist, you know, I didn't know that, Senator. And from her perspective there, in terms of the whole psychiatric aspect of the exposure of children to another form of abuse, that is also that.
Miss Brandon, we will invite our next presenters.
Chair, you are muted, Chair. You're muted.
Thank you. I thought I had unmuted the mic. We will move to our next presenters from the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students and the National Secondary Student Council.
Madam Chair, if I may, my name is Anastasia Gordon-Jones, Legal Officer in the Ministry of Education. We have two separate presentations. The ministry has a separate presentation from the union.
Very well.
May we proceed with our presentation?
May I then invite the presenter from the ministry to commence?
Good morning again, Madam Chair. I'm Anastasia Gordon-Jones, as I said before, legal officer in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Good morning to other members of the Joint Select Committee, colleagues, and other members on the platform. Let me, on behalf of our honorable ministers and acting permanent secretary, express our appreciation for inviting us to present on the tobacco control bill. Here with me today are Mrs. Vivian Johnson. She's a senior director in the Planning and Development Division of the ministry. Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, the executive director of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and Mrs. Nicole Walford from the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. If I may, Madam Chair, may I share my screen?
Brandon, please authorize the sharing of the screen.
Just to confirm whether you're seeing my screen.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. I will start off by saying that the ministry is in support of the tobacco control bill as the government seeks to facilitate the preservation of the health of all persons in accordance with the World Health Organization, WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. In making our submission, the ministry consulted with the CPFSA and the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, who are two important entities under the ministry's portfolio. In proffering comments, the CPFSA noted Article 16 of the convention, which treats with the sale to and by minors, and clauses 15 and 16 of the bill, which treats with protection of children and prohibition on use of child to supply tobacco products or relevant products, respectively. It is the view that there are gaps in clauses 15 and 16, and the provisions do not adequately treat with the overall protection of children, and it is only limited to the recommendation in the convention. In the circumstances, it is suggested that one, there is a clearly defined section that deals with children and the related sections on smoking and children. Two, a provision that makes it an offense for a parent or guardian to cause a child to have access to smoking apparatus. Parents and guardians may smoke and the child can have access to smoking devices whilst such implement is left lying around, and the possibility of indirect and direct access should be prohibited. Three, the bill speaks to tobacco as a general product. The interpretation section speaks to various types of products. For instance, under the definition of the term ingredients, the reference could include marijuana products with specific reference to children. And we are aware that there is a lack of clear reference to marijuana and adults in Jamaica as it relates to smoking. However, we are of the view that the distinction can be made for children. Four, suggesting a drugs court to deal with children who are substance abusers. 5, a reference to detox clinics. And 6, reference to protection of a child in relation to an encounter with the police. In making these suggestions, we draw the committee's attention to some pieces of legislation in other jurisdictions and how they treat with those issues that are outlined above. We have in Trinidad and Tobago, the Children Act, in Bahamas, the Dangerous Drugs Act, and in Canada, for young persons under 18, the Tobacco and Vaping Products Act, 1997. Further observations made is that reference to tobacco is too restrictive and does not satisfactorily cover children. Whilst the bill may be entitled to Tobacco Control Act.
My connection to the forest is deeply rooted.
The forest means everything. It means life. It means existence.
Forests in Jamaica breathe life into an interconnected community of plants, animals, and other organisms. Covering 40% of the island, they form the backbone of the country, from the mountaintop to our shoreline.
As to how that will be done, and I will draw on the expertise of other members of the committee to speak to that. Now, you mentioned one aspect of the protection of child in relation to encounter with the police, and I assume that you're also referring to how this particular piece of legislation, when it's passed into law, how would the child be treated by the police if the child were found? But from my read of this, it is not the child who would be liable. It would be the parent who would be liable for that particular breach. And it would be how you would treat the parent then, which is just a simple matter of the law taking its course. I would want for you to elaborate on that particular part of it, because I am sure you will not see a situation or not to see a situation where the police would definitely handcuff the little child and take them to the police station or to the lockup. So I would seek to get a little elaboration from you where that particular concern is. I want also to at the same time, even though I have no concern about the marijuana, in light of the fact that the bill speaks to other tobacco-related devices, such as vaping and all the rest of it, why I see your call for marijuana to be included here. But as I said, I need to get further comments from my colleagues as to how this could be accomplished. And certainly, Madam Chair, you wear two hats now, right? And you have exercised that two wearing of hats in the previous presentation. And I would also seek for you to guide the committee as to where this would be as well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator, Member Guy, thank you so much. I will just ask Senator Allen and Senator Dr. Longmore to pose their questions and comments. Then I invite him back, and then I'll take the other questions from Senator Golding Campbell. I see CPC Petrona Seeley Brown raising her hand. Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. The point is noted. I have, however, heard persons asking about smoking of anything, whether it's smoking of marijuana or smoking of tobacco. And I think at some stage that question will have to be looked at by the health team and answered. But you're right, this particular bill is dealing with the prohibition on the use of tobacco. However, it is—
But Chair,
yeah,
you all know, and I suspect when you were growing up too, as children, we used to smoke anything that was dried and experimenting and following our parents or others, you know, not necessarily weed, you know, but I can recall that, I mean, during my growing up, chocha leaf, dry chocha leaf was what we would wrap up and try to smoke.
Leaf.
Thank you very much, Kavan. So, you know, I want to thank the person from CPC in making that particular intervention, and I think we have to look at it from that perspective.
No reform. Yes, you know, I'm not the doctor, so I would be guided by the expert on what smoking does to the respiratory system, regardless of what it is that you're inhaling and exhaling. I think that is something that we will have to grapple with. Senator Allen?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I wanted to just seek some clarification from Mrs. Gordon-Jones, part of the presentation where she makes reference to the comments from the Broadcasting Commission. There are two sections in there where she mentioned that even though broadcasters or those who are in the business of broadcasting, that they're already regulated and are not allowed to advertise tobacco products, that there have been instances where products that contribute to smoking, like paper, might imply smoking and therefore ought to be regulated. I hope I'm getting that correct. I just wanted to appreciate any example that there might be of this so I can better understand the concern raised by the Broadcasting Commission. And the second one spoke to advertising in all media, mass media, including DVDs and the internet and all other places. And I just wanted to understand and appreciate from the Broadcasting Commission how that is proposed to be handled, because it seems very far and wide. So I wanted to get a little bit more clarity on the position of the—
Want to register. It's one thing when I think stakeholders, i.e. the public, makes a recommendation like this. I'm usually very carefully looking at a recommendation like this when it's coming from government entity, the state, because I feel a little anxiety when we're talking about treating with children who are caught with tobacco under the judicial system. One of the things that we're grappling with in this committee, and I think we have to be mindful of at all times, is the fact that we're dealing with a product that is legal. Tobacco is not illegal. And we have to consider how we make recommendations or insert provisions in this bill that essentially criminalize the access of, use of a product that we have stopped short of saying must now be deemed illegal. We, I think, have to deal with that tension. And I think we ought to be cautious in terms of how we put the public, the Jamaican citizen, before the judicial system and require that they engage with the judicial system when the product that we're engaging about is a legal one. So I ask the committee, please, to be mindful as we receive these submissions and as we have our deliberations in relation to that point. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Golding. What I hear you saying is that if tobacco remains a legal product, then we have to take care on how we prohibit it and not to do it in a way that it would give the impression that it is illegal when the policy has not gone to that extent to declare it illegal and the law has not made it illegal. I think it's a point well noting.
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
Brown,
if I could just add this one thing, because the implication that I want to just put before the committee as well is the kind of impact that this has on a person, be it child or adult. I hope we're not going to be in a situation where we're creating criminal records for people on the basis of tobacco use and access, etc., because that has wide implication for access to international markets and international travel. And I'm very concerned about doing that, particularly to children.
I share the same concerns as, I'm sorry to interject just like that, but I just wanted to say, Chair, I share the same concerns as Senator Golden Campbell, the caution that we must take to ensure that we're not going down the road of making an action illegal when the product is not illegal.
I think the concerns are valid, and I am on record that I don't believe in over-criminalizing conduct, and we have to take great care, even as we are regulating behavior, use of products or any form of behavior, how we enforce it. And that requires thoughtful consideration. But I do share the view. I think at the same time, though, there is no dispute about the harm that use of tobacco does to the health of persons and the critical need to regulate its use. Dr. Brown Morgan, you wish to come in before I invite back the presenter to respond?
All right. I just wanted to sort of interject from a medical point of view. I think cannabis is it's a whole topic by itself. I don't think it can be adequately or in any way addressed in a discussion on tobacco. I think it probably requires its own forum totally. It is a delicate topic. We know that cannabis serves many medicinal purposes, and glaucoma, asthma, cancer, pain. We also know that cannabis can cause psychosis, can cause psychosis in some users. So the whole use of cannabis in all its ways, inclusive of even smoking it, needs to have a huge medicinal, have a huge medical component and psychiatric component to it, as well as the legal framers, to get a good understanding. I don't think it can be actually properly understood within this conversation today. I'd also like to say, somebody was speaking about this cigarette smoking and what's happening on social media and all over the its use and its promotion generally. And I'd just like to refer, I was on a webinar yesterday. There was this young lawyer from, I think she works for the Ministry of Health, and her name was, I remember, Mrs. Carby. Mrs. Carby. She actually had a lot to say about social media, and she seemed to have a lot of, well, that's what she spoke on. At that time, it was a psychiatric symposium yesterday. But I just would like to suggest, it seems that she's someone who, she impressed us yesterday at the symposium webinar. And her name is Mrs. Carby. I forget the first name right now. But she is with the Ministry of Health, and she does seem to be a lawyer. That's her area. And so you have her as someone to refer to. So that's basically what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We chose to give you the latitude to interject. Senator Dr. Longmore.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Gordon-Jones, for your presentation. A point of clarity that I wanted to get, and also just to also redirect thought on another area. You mentioned in your presentation reference possibly of the young persons caught with marijuana, with tobacco, to the detox clinic or substance use treatment centers. I wasn't too clear if you are proposing that that happens, but I wanted to just clarify that when it comes on to other substance use, that is usually done. And it is usually facilitated in those treatment centers with a little bit of extra attention to the youth, because you can't force someone into a treatment.
Dr. Longmore.
Sorry?
We're not hearing you, Dr. Longmore. I don't know.
My microphone is unmuted.
I'm hearing her.
I'm hearing.
We're hearing her.
I'm hearing her.
Thank you. Are you here now, Chair?
No, hearing you.
Okay, so yeah, so just to continue, to say that that is the usual practice now, and within the treatment field, we actually make extra effort, because you cannot force someone into a treatment center. It has to be a personal choice. It makes no sense if the person isn't willing. And we do make that extra effort for juveniles who are referred from the judiciary. But I am not too clear what the situation is with tobacco and what was actually being proposed when you said whether to have them placed legally or just a referral in terms of taking it incarcerated or something to that effect. So that is something that I'd just like to clarify. And secondly, with respect to the marijuana, as most other persons have indicated, that is a whole nother kettle of fish. But just to point out that the JPA the Jamaica Psychiatric Association did make a recommendation for changes under the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons of the Act to indicate the last line of the first paragraph, where it says, marketing practice related to advertising and promotion of tobacco products and relevant products and smoking generally. We had suggested smoking tobacco and tobacco containing products generally, to specifically hone in that we're only dealing with tobacco in this bill. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Longmore. Just to say that a particular behavior that is sought to be regulated may be a behavior that is common to the use of something else. But it is important that we remind ourselves that this piece of legislation is dealing with tobacco. It is the Dangerous Drugs Act, which deals with marijuana. And I know that piece of legislation is going to be up for review, particularly the 2015 amendments, which dealt with the decriminalization and the authorization of use for therapeutic reason. So let me invite back a response from the presenter. We'll have to wrap up this part of it and move over to the next presenter, because if we have another meeting, parliamentary meeting for 2 o'clock. So this one will have to be brought to an end by 10 minutes to 1, the latest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it regards the issues raised for the Broadcasting Commission, Mistress Nicole Walford, she will respond in relation to those issues on behalf of the Broadcasting Commission. And we have Mrs. Gage Gray, who will ask to respond to the questions as it regards the reference to detox clinics and the issue raised by Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, good morning. Nicole Walford here, Acting Deputy Executive Director at the Broadcasting Commission. I will respond directly to Ms. Allen's queries regarding what we suggested. The example of the advertisement without reference to tobacco comes up quite often for the Commission. what we wanted to bring to the committee's attention is the difference in scope between what the commission administers, that is the television and sound broadcasting regulations, we'll call them TSBR for short, and what is being proposed in the bill. So the difference comes in the definition of tobacco product. And in the television and sound broadcasting regulations, it says no advertisement of any tobacco product, and then it defines tobacco product as means any product, the principal constituent of which is tobacco and includes cigarette papers, tubes, and fillers. We've had instances where persons have put out advertisements that do not refer to cigarettes or tobacco. What it refers to is a product, which is a cigarette paper. So it is Nichols paper, and you must get it at the corner shop, use it, it's easy for light. So they have not referred to smoking, they haven't referred to tobacco, they haven't even referred to nicotine. But this product that they're advertising is only for that purpose. For the TSBR, this is unlawful. But the definition that is now in the Tobacco Control Bill does not extend that far. It covers nicotine and related item. I don't have a definition in front of me right now, but it doesn't extend to things such as fillers and papers. So that's what the commission was referring to when we spoke to them, there being some harmonization between the two, and hopefully that the bill will be extended to cover things such as cigarette papers, tubes, and so on. The other question about the wide...
Before you go to the other question, is that therefore then within the ambit of the Broadcasting Commission and not what we are doing here? Because this bill is speaking to tobacco and tobacco-related products, which includes paper and all the other paraphernalia. But in terms of advertising and broadcasting, wouldn't it be the broadcasting's purview to manage that whole advertising of Nichols paper, for example?
Yes, it would be, but the Tobacco Control Bill actually defines it and has a whole section on advertising. The TSBR is currently being amended or looked at to be amended, and we would not want a disconnect between the two. So that is why it was brought at this point. In terms of the breach, I know Mrs. Gordon-Jones had a little mix up with the slides, but what she really said was that these wide scope for breaches already exist in the bill. The commission was concerned how those breaches would be enforced. So we weren't proposing that we have breaches of every type of media. It's in the 4th schedule. So our suggestion was that the commission gets some form of mandate to regulate that aspect of it, because it will become part of our own mandate. So for harmonization.
All right, we will note the concerns, and when the committee comes to deliberating on the matters, we will address them in due course. Thank you so much. May we move to the presentation from the Student Council Union, please? Mrs. Gordon-Jones, who is doing that presentation?
Madam Chair, go ahead.
Should I go ahead or should I proceed, Chair?
Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Williams. I am the president of the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students. Just for context, the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students has been established since 1972. We are a democratic, non-partisan, independent, and non-sectarian institution that represents the voices of all tertiary students from teacher training institutions, community colleges, technical institutions, universities, and their satellite campuses. And I'm also joined here by my colleague, Rena Robinson. Unfortunately, she's ill, so she'll not be able to present, but she's here when we do have questions later at the end of our presentation. She represents the National Secondary Students Council, which is the equivalent of the JUTS in that they represent the voices of over 300,000 students within the secondary institutions. So the question must be asked, why is it that we needed to present here this morning? It's important because although we have a number of different stakeholders presenting on behalf of youth, we have always maintained that nothing for youth without us. And so we felt that it was important for us to speak on behalf of ourselves and to also assist in ensuring that the policy is effective in handling youth and student matters regarding tobacco, to be specific. So when we consider the 2006 survey that would have spoken to the lifetime use of tobacco and cigarettes, and the fact that it's actually higher among those that utilize tobacco versus marijuana. And we also consider that there is a very early age of initiation for our young people that utilize tobacco. It's very important for us to consider how can we bolster the effectiveness of the policy. We also have to consider that our young people, based on their exposure to this particular drug, it limits their ability to become productive citizens, whether presently as students, as young people, and later on as adults. I will be showcasing a presentation which will go through the different sections that we are responding to. But before I do that, I want to also note that how we'd have arrived at these recommendations is through a number of focus groups, as well as interviews with students and student leaders from both tertiary and secondary institutions. And based on those statements that they would have made to us, we'd have conducted our own research and arrived at suitable recommendations that we'll now proceed to deliver. I'll proceed to share my screen. So firstly, we look at section 15. And even though we commend section 15 and the efforts of the policy to protect our children, we believe that it should be extended to include the protection of our children from second and third hand smoking. And we're going to give you the reasons why we believe that is important. We also believe that where there are cases of, I know we just talked about tobacco not being an illegal substance, and we have to be careful how we censor it and make it appear to be illegal. We think that where there are any kind of sanctions or where there are instances of rehabilitation and support, that should be generated toward persons who would have showcased where they have frequently exposed our children and young people to secondhand act, that we talk specifically, we look specifically at secondhand smoking. I won't beg your pardon?
See that you have a total of 18 slides to present.
I will not be, yes, I will not be
constraint.
reading everything verbatim, Chair.
Very well. So
Thank
you have
so
about
much.
7 minutes to conclude the presentation.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I won't go through everything here. You can all see the slides and you'll see the different impacts of secondhand smoking, chronic adverse effects, sudden infant death syndrome, underweight babies at birth, debilitated lungs. When we talk about respiratory infections, and I'm coming right there, in the context of COVID-19 and the burden already on the Ministry of Health and the state facilities in terms of handling COVID-19 as a respiratory infection and other respiratory infections, and we look at the fact that between those aged 2 to 17, 1 in 5 of these, 1 in 5 of these children actually have instances of wheezing due to asthma. And then 1 in 6 between that very same age group of 2 to 17 actually would have reported that they would have been diagnosed by a doctor for having asthma. In a sense, a high number of our children, students, young people have respiratory infections. And so we do not want to exacerbate that in any means by having our children and young people being exposed to tobacco, particularly secondhand smoking. And you'd have seen the other things, tooth decay, respiratory symptoms, otherwise frequent asthma attacks. It's right there in front of you for deliberation. I think it was the chair, or maybe it was Senator Longmore would have mentioned severe ear infections. It's also something that we see coming out, as well as cataracts in our children who are exposed, and our young people as well who are exposed to secondhand smoking. So you see the importance of why the Act needs to explicitly state secondhand smoking in the provisions. Then we talk about third-hand smoking. That wasn't included as well. And I know for some, it may seem as a non-factor, but it's actually important. Why is that so? Because we have children being exposed to environments where individuals, present or past, would have been smoking over time. And so the surfaces actually have these remnants of smoking, as well as remnants of these particular chemicals. If we're going to be having a comprehensive policy, 2020 we want to have a comprehensive policy, we can't just think about, oh, smoking in the context of smoking in front of us right now, but also environments where young people and children are being exposed where smoking would have taken place. And why is that important? Because when you think about how children and young people interact with surfaces, children, if anyone here was a mother, I'm not a mother, but I have little cousins around me. I know.
Ms. Williams, you're being asked to share the presentation in full screen mode for PBCJ's purpose. Full screen mode, yes.
Give me a second. I'm not sure why.
Move your cursor to the extreme left.
Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Chair. So
up top left.
Content to fit the screen.
Keep going left, keep going left.
So because this cursor is there that I'm seeing the zoom, unless you want me to stop sharing and then resume sharing when it is fixed, that will help.
Just start the slideshow.
It's very difficult to do that because the
document,
okay,
the slideshow.
Awesome.
Start
slide.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You see, even though I'm a young person, I still have challenges with technology. All right. So as I was saying before, if we're thinking about making the policy comprehensive, we also have to consider third-hand smoking because our young people and children interact with surfaces differently. And so you have children and young people, they're sitting on carpets. Right now I'm working as a space, we're doing online school, we're always touching surfaces. We have to consider how third-hand smoking will also affect our children and young people within those scenarios. We're seeing here where we don't have a lot of data on third-hand smoking that is would have been noted right here on the slide. But when we look at researches and studies that would have been done, we're seeing where there are instances of inflammatory markers in the lungs, increased risk again for asthma, slow wound healing, fatty liver disease, and young people and children are likely to become behavioral hyperactive. And we already have a number of ADHD and hyperactive instances in our young people and children. We already have instances of asthma. I just mentioned that earlier. We don't want to exacerbate these issues. So we need to consider third-hand smoking as well in the policy. Then we move to section 19 that talks about sale of tobacco products. No person shall sell or offer for sale of tobacco products or relevant products in any of the following distances as prescribed in relation to such places. And we have example educational facilities. We commend this particular provision. However, when we look at the Dangerous Drugs Act and we talk about the marijuana, and they have mentioned that currently you cannot cultivate within 188 meters of certain areas to ensure that persons within these public spaces are protected. Just as how you would have provided for that in the case of marijuana, we're asking for a similar distance to be explicitly stated in the Tobacco Control Act. I know it's not the Marijuana Act. I'm very clear on that. That was stated numerous times just now in the responses. But regardless, we think that something similar to this provision needs to be had in the Tobacco Act. Then we also talk about in the same section 19, where a person who commits an offense and shall on summon conviction before judge of a parish court be liable to a fine not exceeding $1 million or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 months. The part is cut off, I'm not sure where it is, but we are stating that even though we are aware that in law, we cannot say that the person must be convicted with this, there has to be a range, there must be jurisdiction and discretion given to the court. We're suggesting that there should be a recommendation made that where persons are continuously, I would say, the repeat offender of breaking this particular aspect of the policy, there should be an increase in a more punitive conviction given to this person, whether it's going to be the $1 million or the term of imprisonment, etc. Then we move to note 2, which speaks of where a person or body is found guilty of Right, there's where it is. We talk about where there have been continuously, intentionally negligent exposure to children to this risk, that the maximum sanction be recommended as a penalty or as close to the maximum sanction as possible. Once again, we are aware that judges have to be allowed discretion when handing down sentencing. Then we talk about sections 5 and 6. Government to undertake comprehensive nationwide education and information campaign, and education and information campaign to be carried out in schools. So we are proposing the JUTS and NSSC that institutions of learning should also be added in section 6, that the stipulation be added to places where youth are regularly facilitated. So we're talking about community centers, anywhere that young people usually engage and operate. Those spaces should be explicitly stated in the Act. This broader term would encapsulate state care facilities as well. We tend to think that children only occupy spaces of homes with parents or guardians. We have quite a number of our young people and children in state care facilities, in detention centers. These as well need to be catered. These groups as well, these factions as well need to be catered to through any kind of support or rehabilitation that we're doing within the Act, or through the Act rather. And we need to also ensure that there's some kind of sensitization and education happening with these young people and the children within these spaces. We also propose that a clause be included of engagement of youth in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of these programs, as there should be no program for youth without youth direct involvement in its development. We have the 1980 Education Act that speaks to youth involvement through JUTS and NSSC. We're actually legitimized through the Education Act. We feel that if we're going to be talking about youth issues and solving youth issues and having these interventions mentioned in the policy, that there should be a place where young people have a formal seat in that engagement. I know that when we're invited here, I would like to hope at least that when we're invited here to speak on behalf of young people, it wasn't a tokenistic effort. It wasn't just to say that, oh, we had young people speak on the bill. I would like to hope that the government of Jamaica wants to engage young people meaningfully. So we're asking in a very formal setting that we be addressed and engaged meaningfully through this act in a very continuous format, not just to have us at this consultation and for the policy to be passed, but how we'll be engaged after. We suggested, along with educational campaigns, so the section is included that speaks to monitoring and rehabilitation of offenders charged under this act. In this scenario, however, we're primarily concerned with parents or relatives and youth who may become charged. As was mentioned before by one of my colleagues here, that we never want our young people to become criminalized by this act. And so it's very important that we have something explicitly talking about how are we going to rehabilitate our young people if it is that they're fined or charged under this particular act, and as well as our parents and relatives as well. The JUTS and NSSC don't take the stance of criminalizing people so much and fining people so much, but more about rehabilitation and support. Smoking is a cultural thing, and fining persons, in my opinion, as a young person, even looking at how we have dealt with the COVID-19 situation, finding people is never just a solution. We need to have more social interventions with our young people and with the parents and guardians of our young people. We're almost at the end. So just before we have any questions or comments from everyone here, I would like to also talk about briefly the mention of the removal of scholarships or the compromise or the limitation of scholarships for young people afforded through tobacco companies. We would have seen that there have been a suggestion by Senator Longmore that funding that is now being offered by groups, by tobacco companies, could be channeled through, for example, the education fund that the ministry has. And I think I also spoke about culture and health fund as well, that the ministry has. We agree with that because we do not believe that just removing and pulling these scholarships will solve the issue. It should mean that we need funding. We need funding for young people in our secondary institutions, and we need funding for those in tertiary institutions. And as the person who speaks on behalf of all tertiary students in Jamaica, I can tell you that young people need as much funding as they get. But while we're balancing public health and we're balancing how our young people are affected or exposed to these particular substances, we have to have some form of compromise. And that compromise would be to channel it through some form of fund where young people can still access these scholarships. But JUTS and NSSC do not support you pulling the funding just like that. And there's nothing in place to alleviate the burden that will still exist on our young people to fund their education. I also want to finally note that there needs to be more research around the impact of tobacco and any other substances on our young people. When we're doing the research, we could only find research as dated as 2013, which was done by University of the West Indies, Mona. That is unacceptable. The Ministry of Health needs to pay for or engage international entities to have research more relevant and timely data on how this affects our young people. We can't have a policy and we're talking about how tobacco impacts our young people and what we're doing to reduce that impact, and we don't have timely and relevant research. That's already a gap before we get to the policy. So please, those are recommendations from DRIPS and NSSC. We thank you so much for having us here presenting today. We look forward to meaningful engagement post this session, and the floor is now open for any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Ms. Williams, a very spirited presentation, and rest assured that the information you have provided is not a matter of mere formality. Among the many things, I think for me, two stand out is the need to ensure that young people are not unnecessarily criminalized, because that has huge impact for them. And secondly, that errant behavior is dealt with in a way that would help them, in a rehabilitative manner that would help them to turn their path, among other things. Thank you for the presentation. Just to say that we do have some time constraints. I'm going to ask members to be as succinct as possible. Dr. Guy, I see your hand, but I'm going to take Senator Morris, since I know her appointment to the Senate came as a representative of the young people. Yes,
Thank you,
Senator
Madam
Morris.
Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just first start off by saying commendable presentation from JUTS. I was impressed with how Christina was able to raise these issues that are pertinent to young people. She also spoke about something that I'd raised in a previous meeting about the awarding of scholarships from companies, tobacco companies. And I think it was inferred by someone from the technical team that this was not the intent and that it would be reviewed. I wanted some guidance on any progress that has been made in this regard, since it has been raised again, to see how we can mitigate, because as Christina said, it's such an important part. These scholarships are important to young people and they really help to facilitate their education moving forward. So I wanted some insight from the technical team on what that progress has looked like since that meeting.
Thank you, Senator Morris. Member Guy?
Yes, mine is very brief, Madam Chair. Just first of all, I want to thank Ms. Williams for her presentation, but I take umbrage to the fact that she's suggesting that her presence and her team here as young people is mere tokenism. I have sat on many of these committees, and it is the informed position presented by many sectors that have finally guided legislation. So I want you to be assured that it's nothing like that, and I'm in total agreement with you what you said earlier on.
Thank you, Member Guy. I don't think any umbrage was meant, so take none.
I did take, and I still do.
You know, Member Guy, the truth is that much has been said about meaningful engagement of the youths. And I think there is also a lot of evidence to say that there is a huge space for improvement in how what comes after we listen to them. But anyone from the technical team has a quick response to the funding issue and the scholarship issue in particular? If not, we will note it, Senator Morris, because it's an issue that we will have to come back to. So let me just thank Ms. Christina Williams and her team member who is not ill, wish her speedy recovery. Thank the Ministry of Education for their presentation. And we move to the next presenter, Beth. Vape Shop Limited.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, sorry. Okay, so my name is Jordan Mollison. I'll be presenting on behalf of my company, the Vape Shop Limited, as well as the vape industry in Jamaica, which is a new and budding industry. So just to start, okay, I'm having a little bit of issue. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we are.
Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. So, can I share my screen, please? Chesan? Okay. So I'm assuming that I can go ahead. Okay. All right. So my name is Jordan Malson, as I said. I own a vape company. I'll be speaking to the definitions in the bill that lump vape products and tobacco products together, traditional tobacco products, right? So just to give a little background, I had started my vaping company out of a need that I had seen in the Jamaican marketplace for people to get off of traditional smoking products. I myself was a smoker of 11 years, and vaping had helped me to quit smoking, right? The reason for me touching on these points is I believe that if you limit vaping products to the same definition as traditional tobacco products, then any benefit that they may pose to the wider public as being a smoking cessation tool will actually be removed, right? And I think that it's very important to have it available to the public in addition to other things like nicotine patches, like nicotine gum, to help the wider public get off of traditional smoking products. And I believe that it is very effective, right? There are studies that have been done that prove that it is a lot more effective than traditional smoking cessation products, right? I'm actually supposed to have two experts here with me who have experience in helping to guide policy as it relates to smoking cessation in other countries. I believe only one of them are here today. That is Kosi Letley, and the other one was to be Dr. Delon Human, right? So just to go over some of the benefits, right? Vaping has been around for many years, from the 1960s, right? It's made up of common ingredients that are not known to be harmful, right? Like propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, common ingredients used in asthma inhalers, other devices, right? So it's just a device that is meant to transport ingredients, right? So the main purpose and selling point of vaping is harm reduction, right? I also want to speak to the legislation regarding how we regulate vaping in Jamaica. I also believe that it should be regulated separate from cigarettes, but it still requires regulation and strict regulation as well, right? So in my store, what I do, we have no smoking signs everywhere, right? We only sell to people who present identification, and it has to be government ID, so nothing that can be easily forged, right? We don't allow people with uniforms to even come near the store, much less even if you do have an ID, right? Because I don't believe in that, right? And I also don't believe we should infringe on people's rights to pursue their wants and needs as long as it's within the Constitution, within their constitutional rights, right? Not within their legal right. Now, another reason why I want to ensure that there is proper regulation.
Though there is no constitutional right to smoke.
Yes, as in it doesn't state that in the Constitution, but it states that, you know, it's within your right to pursue anything that doesn't harm others, right? And that is not illegal. So, but thank you for that interruption, right?
And as you rightly says, that doesn't harm others.
Correct, right? And it has also been proven that vaping has no secondhand effects, no direct secondhand effects, right? You can actually look up a study done by Public Health England. There's many other studies that have been done. So that information is all publicly available, right? Now, another thing that I wanted to touch on is consequences of over-regulation, right? Everybody knows that when it comes on certain products, right? If you over-regulate them, that leaves space for a void in the market, and usually that is filled by a black market. And I believe this will be doing the public a great disservice, right? And I don't think that's anything that we want to see for the public at large, and especially for young people in the age of the internet, where anybody can order anything online and get access to it, right? if the market is properly regulated down here, we can ensure that access to those products is permanently cut off for them because they need an ID to access it. Versus ordering online right now, they can order it without an ID, right? And still get it through their Amazon cards sent straight to wherever, Ship Me or wherever. So I think that would be a viable first step, right? Local market trends. A lot of people have been concerned, and I've heard Minister Tufton mention it before, that he's concerned about youth access to vape products, right? And once again, I believe that regulation is the way to go in solving this problem. I believe that, honestly, if you put emphasis on regulation rather than emphasis on banning the product or in lumping it in with cigarette controls, it will do more good than harm, right? We've extrapolated some data from our POS because, as I say, everybody has to use their ID to purchase. And the data is presented here. Most of our customers are between the age of 25 and 50. Approximately 1/6 of our customers are tourists because it's a very big product for tourists. And then half of them come from Kingston and St. Andrew, right? Majority of our customers that have used this product have started vaping and quit. And the other remaining percentage of the customers who have not quit have reduced the amount that they smoke over time, consistently, right? So that in and of itself, that's the only form of local data I would be able to present to prove the effectiveness of vaping as a smoking cessation tool, right? And as I said, we have the studies by Public Health England that you can view. It's publicly available that says that vaping is 95% less harmful, right, than smoking tobacco cigarettes. And it's of negligible risk to bystanders, right? So in the end, I had some testimonials by some doctors, but for the sake of time, I will save the testimonials. But I'm not sure if it will play in this medium. So what I can do, if members are willing, I can email it to the members of the committee and you can review it. But he does have a statement here, Dr. Rudy Garrick, he's a general practitioner, that says, with vaping, I've gotten the option to reduce my amount of nicotine to the point where it's 0 nicotine and it's just for flavor. And he has completely quit smoking cigarettes, right? And he recommends it to everybody who wants to get off of cigarette smoke, right? And I also have testimonials by several other Jamaican doctors as well as foreign doctors. And so this will bring me to the end of my presentation. I believe the expert, Dr. Kosi, that I have here with me, can assist with the Q&A section.
Thank you, Mr. Mollison, for your presentation. I'll just kick off by saying, to the extent that we are looking to encourage behavior away from smoking, anything that helps to transition, any healthy option that helps to transition is something that would be considered. And so what you presented enlightened me, because I certainly did not know as much as what I gleaned from the presentation about the vaping and how it helps to transition away from the addiction to nicotine. So thank you. We'll take questions or comments from members and any response from the technical team. Dr. Longmore, Senator Dr. Longmore. Senator Dr. Longmore, please.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Getting my things sorted out here. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Mollison. Yes, quite useful. And yes, do agree with you, Chair, in terms of the healthy or the less harmful alternatives to smoking cessation, tobacco cessation. And what I think he also has inadvertently done is also helps us to appreciate the very dangerous effect that tobacco can have when we recognize that other mechanisms can be used in the same way, but actually are less harmful. But I just want to bring to the attention, I just quickly just Googled something from the Johns Hopkins medical site regarding vaping. Just 5 quick facts. Vaping is less harmful than smoking, but it is still not safe. Next one, electronic cigarettes aren't the best smoking cessation tool. There are definitely safer alternatives for persons who are seeking to discontinue cigarette cessation. Electronic cigarettes are just as addictive as traditional ones. And the research showing vape is bad for your heart and lungs in many ways. There is actually an increase in certain cancers and certain lung pathologies in persons, especially younger adults, who are engaging in electronic smoking. So it is now, that is actually one of the significant public health concerns amongst young people at this time because of the increased use of electronic cigarettes in that age group. So I have to bring that to the attention of the committee also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Longmore. I see Mr. Mollison, if I can read anything from his virtual demeanor. He began by saying it was a business he had set up in part of the transition away from it. But your points are well noted that even though vaping may be less harmful in relation to tobacco, it is not without harm, as it were. Thank you. Is it Dr. Letlape or Letle?
Yes, it's Dr. Letlape. Yes, I would like to thank the chair and the committee for giving us an opportunity to speak to this matter. And just maybe to start on the news of yesterday. Yesterday, the FDA, for the first time, gave approval to a vaping product called VOOS. And what the FDA has said is that they agree that they see a public health benefit from authorizing, giving it pre-market tobacco authorization, based on the fact that the harmful constituents are greatly reduced. A few months ago, the FDA approved the use of IQOS, which is a heat-not-burn technology, and they gave them authorization for reduced exposure claim. Prior to that, they authorized snus, which is basically snuff in a sachet, to make a modified risk claim based on evidence that has been provided. Now, if you go back to the Royal College of Physicians report of 1962 and the Surgeon General's report of the US of 1964, which basically linked the some of the 7,000 chemicals produced by combustion to serious disease, including cancer, heart disease, and stroke. Things have changed. And in the 70s, a physician called Michael Russell from the UK made it known to the world that the smokers are addicted to the nicotine, but they die from the tar. And one of the things that the FDA said yesterday is the fact that the aerosol produced by e-cigarettes is significantly less toxic than the one of documented through toxicological studies that the harmful constituents are reduced by as much as 95% to 99% on others. When you look at toxicological analysis, e-cigarettes have been put close to nicotine replacement therapy in terms of exposure. Heat-not-burn is slightly higher, but all of them are at a minimum 95% less harmful than combustible cigarettes. So the key problem is combustion. And as a physician, I still tell patients, quit. But if you can't quit, we can't let you die. 8 million people die from cigarette-related diseases annually. We've seen a frenzy of action And from COVID, we've just reached 5 million in nearly 20 months. Smoking is terrible, but smokers are human. And it is time that all efforts to save lives be undertaken. I've been part of a commission that has just released a report of fighting against smoking. And one of the key issues is that if we embrace technology, if we go merrily the way we're doing now, we may reduce the deaths with the FCTC intervention from 8 million to about 6.5 million by 2050. If we adopt the harm reduction strategies based on science, we will reduce deaths to 3.5 million. Those 4 million smokers that can be saved are human. And I hope, Madam Chair, that there will be a clear distinction between combusting tobacco and non-combustion. And that even though you have a legislative framework that is to be applauded, it needs to be able to differentiate between the degrees of harms caused by the different products. That is why in medicine, we invented nicotine replacement therapy.
Can I ask, am I to understand that vaping involves non-combusting tobacco as opposed to combusting?
Yes. The key problem is when you bend that leaf.
Your concern for the regulation of the use of tobacco is for a distinction to be drawn between combusting and non-combusting tobacco, which has this effect. We will note that, and I think those are matters that will have to be deliberated upon. I am not in a position to say how yet, but that distinction is to be noted, and the technical team will respond. But thank you both for the presentation, and I do see the value of your input in the discussion around the regulation of tobacco, since there is this distinction between combusting tobacco and non-combusting tobacco and the product that you are selling as a less harmful alternative to the use of nicotine as persons seek to transition away from addiction or smoking. Thank you
Madam
both.
Chair, Chair, I'm not a salesperson. I'm a health professional, and I just want to educate on this matters. And there are other non-combustible agents with strong epidemiological evidence, like snus in Sweden. And I'm happy to come back to the committee with details, references, and the studies.
Should the need arise, Dr. Letlape, we will so indicate, but thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Mr. Mollison.
Madam Chair, might I just ask before you let Dr. Letlape go, and I know we're crunching against time, that if there is a written submission that he could provide, I think it would be helpful for us to look at his submission. So if he could just submit his thoughts and anything else that he didn't get to cover, I would be grateful, certainly as a committee member, to be able to look at it.
We will do that, and thank you for that opportunity.
Very well.
Facilitate the transfer.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Dr. Longmore.
Thank you. Just as a quick response, as it was brought to the fore regarding the FDA approval that happened yesterday, just for clarity and completeness, the American Lung Association has responded to that FDA approval with this statement. The American Lung Association is dismayed that the FDA will permit 3 vapes products to remain on the market in the US, including products that contain almost 5% nicotine. The harm these products cause to youth shows that they fail to meet the Tobacco Control Act's public health standard. End of quote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Longmore. Important information. I suspect that because of not only the issues around harm and health, but the social side and the commercial side to the use of the products and the habit, there is going to be quite a bit of information for us to weigh in the balance. Let me thank the presenters. I do not believe that for the remaining 10 minutes of the meeting that we have any need for you. We just have some housekeeping matters. You are okay to stay on, but just in case you have to go. Thank you all for your very informative presentation, and thank members for their questions, comments, which made the session quite engaging. On a housekeeping note, just to indicate that since the committee's last meeting, we have had a number of persons and entities indicating a desire to present. Among them, we have Pier 1 requesting to appear before the committee to address it. The committee will have to make a decision on whether to grant the request, since the invitations for participation and submission of documents that were sent out indicated a timeline for response. We also have Mr. Wayne Booth, operator of Boot to Go, and the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. They have made submissions on the bill. The submissions were attached to emails sent earlier. The committee, therefore, would have to decide whether to accept the submissions. We're asked to all note that we had sent out a letter on February 24 of this year to the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, inviting it to make a submission on the bill. And there was a deadline of March 24, and subsequent to tomorrow's meeting, the following entities remain to present: Ashton Center for Health and Society, the Association of General Practitioners of Jamaica, Jamaica Psychological Society, Corporate Accountability, the Jamaica Coalition for Tobacco Control, Healthy Caribbean Coalition, the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, and I think that entity made one recommendation to the committee in a single sentence. Committee would have to decide which of the entities should present at the next meeting. And the last matter for consideration is the date and time for the next meetings, with the proposals for next Thursday, October 21 at 10 a.m. and the following Tuesday, November 2 at 10 a.m. So in respect of the first matter of who next to present, among them being Boot to Go, Pier 1, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, but I believe those would have to come after the entities that had responded in time. So Ashton Center for Healthy Society, Association of General Practitioners of Jamaica, and the Jamaica Psychological Society. I would propose no more than 3 at a time to enable us, sufficient time to engage with the presentations. I throw that out for consideration. Of course, we recall that Minister Tufton had indicated that we would try to limit the oral presentations to 10 minutes in order for useful time engagement. But after the presentation comes questions, come comments, and come discussion, which we also have to bear in mind in order to maintain timeliness in the meetings. So if I would propose, I would say Ashton Center for Health and Society, the Association of General Practitioners, and the Jamaica Psychological Society. And then if we have a consensus in relation to the next 2 meeting dates for next Thursday, those 3 would go next week. And the following Tuesday, we could take Corporate Accountability, the Jamaica Coalition for Tobacco Control, Healthy Caribbean Coalition, and the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. I note it's a 1-sentence recommendation. In that case, we probably could invite, if the committee so minded, Pier 1 or Boot to Go for the Tuesday meeting. Senator Member Gale, I see your hand.
So, Chair, you had asked whether or not we should consider the Pier 1 on the boot.
Yes.
And I'm in support of that because I think the committee needs to hear from the business community more in relation to this. And those two represent business community, while the others are seen as associations or representative of groupings. I'd certainly like to hear from the business community. So I'm in support of hearing from the submission in terms of Pier 1 and Mr. Booth. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Senator Gale. I echo your sentiment. Unless there is any indication to the contrary, I would say all of us that there is good utility in hearing from the business community. And
agreed, Chair. Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, could you just indicate the Tuesday meeting is at what time?
Tuesday would be at 10 a.m. because Parliament sits at 2. So any sitting on a Tuesday would be for the morning session.
I wouldn't be able to attend that Tuesday meeting, I'm afraid.
Right. Well, we would miss your participation and present Senator Golding, but if we would have a quorum, the meeting would still go on. But we note your concern. All right.
I have a difficulty, Chair, with Thursday next week on the 21st. I'm hoping that I can, if it is so.
Very well. We will still propose it for consideration.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Just to clarify, is it that the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce was also being contemplated or not? And are they in the same category as Boot and Pier 1? Meaning late submission?
Well, yes, because they came in quite late and after the deadline had passed. Yes.
So Boot, Pier 1, and Chamber of Commerce all came in late?
Yes.
And are they,
my understanding,
Jamaica Chamber of Commerce also requesting to make a presentation?
I believe that they have submitted, both Boot to Go and the Chamber have made submissions, written submissions.
Are we going to request similarly written submission from Pier 1 or they won't be?
I think it is always helpful, even if presenters come and engage with us, that we have something in writing which captures the essence of their recommendations for consideration.
All those questions just to make it equal and fair, that if all 3 were late, 2 have made physical presentation, that the 3rd be asked to make a written presentation, and that all 3 then allowed to present, if that's the case.
All right, so the consideration for the committee is that in respect of the 3 entities that have indicated a desire to present late, that all 3 be required to submit their paper to be followed by an appearance before the committee. Bear in mind that there is not necessarily a need for everyone who submits to appear, but
I was only stating that in the event they had asked, and I think as the Chamber of Commerce for Jamaica, it might be useful, even though they're an association, that it's a body, that I'm sure we would benefit from their input, just to make it consistent.
Agreed.
Yes, I believe we're all on the same page, Senator Allen. All right, so we therefore, yes, Ms. Brandon?
Before you go, just for clarity, in terms of the next meeting, the Aston Center for Health and Society, the Association of General Practitioners of Jamaica, and the Jamaica Psychological Society will present on October the 21st.
Yes.
And then following that meeting, November the 2nd, we will have Corporate Accountability, Jamaica Coalition for Tobacco Control, and the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. However, for Pier 1, Mr. Booth and the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, we did not set a date when we will hear those presentations.
Right, so it would be a matter of scheduling. May I suggest, since I know the limited time, there is a process by which you look for available dates for the Joint Select Committee meetings, given that other meetings compete for the time.
Yes.
Right. So may I ask perhaps that you could look at that for the meeting next after the 2nd of November, and we round robin on that.
The next sitting.
I'd like to
Yes.
make a suggestion, Chair. I understand that you mentioned that the submission made by the JHTA was literally one sentence, and I think we all recall. I don't know, is it that they also required a presentation because the Pier 1 is a member of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association? I wonder whether they can coordinate and see if there might be an opportunity to synchronize.
Senator Allen, it was for that reason why initially I'd said maybe we could have Pier 1 come along on that occasion, say, because of the relationship with them. And since it was also a one-line recommendation. Right. Ms. Brandon, perhaps you can clarify that. I would throw out that we could consider inviting Pier 1 to take the slot with the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association.
Noted, Chairman.
Very well. All right, so thank you all for what I believe was a very productive meeting, both the presentations, the follow-up questions and discussions. Unless there is any other business to be addressed, I would ask that someone move for the adjournment of this meeting.
Chairman, before you go, Chairman, may I ask, will the next meeting be virtual or face-to-face?
It is my thinking that it would be virtual.
Noted.
That's my understanding. Very well. May someone move for the adjournment?
So moved.
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Senators Golden Campbell and Gale. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.